I wanted to start with, as instructed, with a bit about myself. And I'll actually start with my maternal grandfather, who, when it was coming up to the centenary of the First World War, my mum said, "You're the techie guy in the family. Can you do a bit of research around my dad?" He served in the First World War, and I want to find out more about his service record. And that got me locked into ancestry.co.uk, and it's a massive thief of time. But what I discovered about William Harper was he did fight in the First World War, but I found the census records for, obviously as you do, for 1911. 1911, he was 14 years old. He was in Wolverhampton. He was working, he's 15 years old, he was working as a locksmith. I assume, knowing Wolverhampton reasonably well, at the Chubb factory. And further research, he'd been to school at a school founded for the children of Irish migrants by the Sisters of Mercy. He was basically taught to read and write and to turn up on time and do as he's told, so that he would be well prepared for factory work, which was his destiny. And the education system was performing that function very well for him. He then served in the trenches, survived, otherwise I wouldn't be here, and something happened there around social mix, which changed his aspiration. He became a travelling salesman, moved to Northamptonshire ultimately via various adventures, and as a result, my mum was born just outside Kettering. Now, she made the cut. She passed the 11 plus and got into a grammar school. Now, when my granddad was at school, a few percent would go to university. When my mum went to grammar school, a few percent went to university, because you could go to grammar, that would set your destiny, and if you made the cut, you could join the profession. So my mum went into banking, into the High Street Bank. She met my dad, who went to the neighbouring boys' grammar school, so they were sorted by gender as well as by ability at the age of 10, and he went into accounting. Neither of them went to university. They could join the professions without going to university. That was the way the system worked at the time. Incidentally, my dad was one of 4 boys. He was the oldest. 2 of them made the cut. So one went into banking, one went into the accountancy. The other 2 didn't make the cut. So one became a merchant seaman, the other became an agricultural labourer. And the rift in that family remained ever since. Only one of them is now alive, but it continued throughout their lives, in large part informed by an educational system that divided people at 10. My parents, therefore, joined the professions, so they were able to afford to buy me the privilege of a private school education. I went to Eltham College down the road, had a fantastic time. That was a school designed around training boys to pass Oxbridge entrance exam and go to Oxbridge. And me and my brother were the first in our family ever to go to university. We both went to Cambridge. We had a fantastic time. And the proposition for us was, work really hard at school-ish, do well enough working hard to do well in your exams, your O-levels, to then do your A-levels. Then you'll go to a great university, as we did. You can then choose whatever career you want, get a job for life, final salary pension scheme, a 25-year mortgage, retire in your mid-50s, everything, provide really well for your kids, everything's sweet. Great model. Hasn't changed since then. How did it play out for me? I mean, great model, obviously, if you're privileged. How did it play out for me? Well, I'm still working. I am 53. I am on my 4th, 5th career. So I've been an actor stroke theatre promoter. That was 1. A telephone directory salesperson for 10 years until I became a director of the company. Really shit job. But it taught me a lot. Professional politician, as a member of parliament and a minister, 3 years as schools minister, and some other things along the way, 5 years as a minister under Blair and Brown. And then the golden parachute into the House of Lords when I lost my seat as Gordon lost his. And and then moving into the commercial world. And I'm now one of the chief officers at TES, which is a big teacher nurturing business that publishes the Times Education Supplement, as was, but it's the 5th largest qualifier of teachers in the country, runs a huge lesson sharing platform with 11 million registered users in every country in the world, etc. I won't bore you about TES, it's great. But that whole story of my family is about how the education system is supposed to evolve and change according to how the economy and society changes. And yet we are in the 4th industrial revolution with a legacy education system of the industrial age. 4 factoids, to use a Harriet Harman phrase. According to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, we have an 8% real terms cut in the last 8 years in school funding. According to TES, over the next 5 years, we will end up 47,000 secondary school teachers short of what the English system needs, and that's that's double the amount that we train every year. It's a problem. According to NHS Digital, 1 in 5 16 and 17-year-old girls either self-harm or attempt suicide. According to a recent survey, 56% of our school teachers do not think our school system is fit for purpose. I agree with them, even though I was responsible for it for 3 years. Teachers say to me, it's largely an accountability system problem. We have this EBAC thing, which is an accountability measure which narrows the curriculum. It's only academic subjects that are really valued. Science, technology, engineering, and maths, STEM, we talk about all the time. They've got rid of the applied bits. It's S&M now, science and maths, not anything else, because technology and engineering there's no room for. They talk about Ofsted. They talk about a risk-averse culture, because if you fail your Ofsted as a head teacher, that's it. Career is over. And there's just this spiral of decline with no money, where you end up having to hire cheap, inexperienced teachers. That leads to an increase in low-level disruptive behaviour, because they don't know how to do their behaviour management quite as well, by and large. That leads to more stress amongst those teachers, more sickness leave, more use of supply teachers, temporary teachers. That in turn affects retention. That affects the teacher quality that you're retaining in the system. As teacher quality goes down, the results go down, parental choice kicks in, the parents withdraw their kids or don't want to sign up, and so your budgets fall and the cycle continues down. What do parents want? Parents tell us that they essentially want their kids to be happy and not to have to fight to get them out from under the duvet every morning. They want them to achieve according to the cultural norm, and they're a bit confused about what that is now, but it's still probably to go to university. And they want them to get a job at the end of the educational journey. How is it for young people? Well, I think, bloody hell, we're being tested to death. There's 6 or 7 big tests throughout your school career. We are worried about 50 grand's worth of debt if we do decide to go to university, that the robots are going to take our jobs anyway, that these qualifications, as Liz has said, don't really get valued by universities in the same way, and it's no wonder that we've therefore got mental health problems. And employers, as we've heard, are saying, yeah, of course we want the basics. We want people to read and write and add up, but we're kind of fed up of having to unteach them before we can then train them to do something that's really productive and useful for us. I was speaking to AXA, a big insurance company, the other day. They've abandoned their graduate training scheme. Waste of time. You know, they had 12 places. They would do the expense of the milk round to all the universities. They would get thousands of applications. There's a huge cost in sifting them just for 12 people. Now they've got the apprenticeship levy, much easier to grow their own. And that's what they do. They've abandoned graduate recruitment. And they are not alone. There's a whole swathe who now understand that a successful business has a diverse workforce, a diverse set of decision makers, not people who are essentially cookie cutters out of the same graduate schools, if they are going to be successful. Hence the need for higher education reform, because that model is running out of road. Why on earth would we counsel our kids to take on 50 grand's worth of debt to then have a qualification that may be meaningless and worthless to them fairly soon? Why not? Yeah, I mean, Rolls-Royce apprenticeships are more competed for than a place at Oxford, but some of those options are are serious. So I've become interested in a new model, and I'll try and, 2 or 3 minutes. Good. To an extent inspired by School 21, inspired by some private schools, Bedales, Sevenoaks, both interesting models where they kind of have developed their own qualifications so that they can test less, so they can free up lots of time in the curriculum, and persuaded universities to take them. But I want a whole ecosystem change. I want to change from, with less testing and standardization. There's a great book by a guy called Todd Rose, who's a Harvard academic, called The End of Average, about the way we all compare ourselves to an average standard. We need to move away from that towards more individualization, which is where the digital age takes us, and have an ecosystem that's all through from kindergarten to retirement. Because what we know is, like me, we're going to pivot through multiple careers, and we're going to have a lifelong relationship with learning. You're going to have to love learning. You're going to have a lifelong relationship with universities. So why wouldn't you have a subscription to university, either individually or as an employer, not have a front-loaded 4-year experience, 3 or 4 year experience at the beginning of your working life with all of the debt, but pay a little bit through your working life and keep going back and keep topping up with shorter, more meaningful, more productive learning experiences. I would like to see more baked in peer-to-peer social learning as you would at work and in the real world. There's an important knowledge stage at the end of an early years stage. And Estelle Morris has been mentioned, and Ken Baker, former Thatcher's Education Secretary, we all agree, end the national curriculum at 14, have a 7 to 14 knowledge stage of the curriculum, where you might have some exams, abolish GCSEs, waste of time and money. We spend £1 billion a year on testing in our school system. We don't need to spend that. It's a waste of time. Move into an applied stage, 14 to 19, where you're applying that learning, bring that back into schools, and working out where your talents really lie. Every child is a genius, and the world needs their contribution, and we just have to bring it out and find it, and use that stage to really bring it out, and then connect them into employers. I would love a presumption that you leave school and go into work for a short while. And then you may be ready to make a decision about taking on a bunch of debt to do a bachelor's degree, if bachelor's degrees still exist. But have that lifelong relationship with universities, have a lifelong relationship with learning, pure and applied. And then we might get an ecosystem that we can be proud of and that we can build our country on in this fourth industrial age. Thank you.